7 p.m. W5FC. W5FC repeater, PL 110.9.
now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Anyone needs to use the repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet. My name is Brenda, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the plus sign break break and your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic? Net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control. That would be me. And stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.88 megahertz and a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5SC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio-video links are available online. Go to www.w5sc.org right now for the complete list. Remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. This net is 90 minutes long and structured in several parts. 1, general announcements. 2, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events. 3, National Space Society events. 4, discussion topic of the evening. 5, what you can see in the sky tonight. 6, a featured constellation or object or topic. 7, recent astronomical discoveries. 8, space exploration and space history. And 9, visible satellite passages over the next couple of days. 10, if we have time, astronomical Q&A, and 73 round. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. So let's start with low power and short time check-ins. Please come now. Your call sign, name, and where you're transmitting from this evening.
Juliet, Papa, November, Mark, and Oak Cliff. RXQ, Les, Rockwall.
If I read this right, and neither signal was terribly strong, we have KG5JTN ART and K5RXG LES. Please correct me if that's not right.
5,
Romeo, X-ray, Quebec, left, Rockwall.
K5RXQ, Les.
QSL.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's move on to regular check-ins. Please come now.
November 5, Bravo, Bravo. Bill in Irving.
This is November 5, Alpha, Bravo Alpha, Andre in Dallas.
Oh, 5, Juliet, Delta, Whiskey, John in Coppell. Oh, 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas.
Charlie 5, Oscar Zulu Tango, Carolyn in Louisville.
Oh, Foxtrot 5, Zulu, Bravo, Lima, Bill, Farmers Branch. Kilo Golf 5, Papa, Mike, P5, Echo, Bravo, Bravo, David in Dallas. Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-ray, Tom, Louisville.
Let's pause there. We have N5BB, Bill, N5 ADA, Andre, K5JDW, John, NT5TM, Tony, KC5OZT, Carolyn, KF5ZBL, Bill, KG5P, Mike, W5EBB, David, and KE5ICX, Tom. Do we have any more general check-in?
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Papa Delta Sierra, Billy and Sherman.
We got KFI, PDS, Billy, and Sherman. Any other Echolink check-ins? Please come down.
Kilo Golf 5, Bravo Zulu Whiskey, J, near Weatherford.
This is November 5, Yankee, Echo, Oscar, Stephen, San Antonio.
Kilo Golf 5, Zulu Charlie Tango, David in Frisco.
Okay, KG5, BZWJ, N5YEOC, Stephen. And the last one I didn't get. Would you please repeat that?
This is Kilo Golf 5, Zulu Charlie Tango, David in Frisco.
I got KG5 Zulu Charlie Tango in Frisco. All right. Anybody else? Do we have any general announcements for this evening's net? It can be ham, astronomical, space, or of general interest to licensed hams.
It's Tango Mike.
NT5TM. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah. Thank you, Brenda. I'd like to remind everyone that the announcements from TechNet are available at w5fc.org. The Dallas Amateur Radio Club is looking for help with the Prism House Life Walk on Sunday, October 7th, and the TechNet on the Hill event on Saturday, October 27th. To those upcoming public service events, we do have another net coming up tonight. We'll be watching a movie about the X-15 and discussing it tonight right here at 10:30 p.m. for the Afterglow Movie Net. I hope Tom will have more to say about that. I unfortunately have not been able to see the movie. I think it's in color, but I don't know if it's good, bad, ugly, or completely different. So I hope you'll join us here for all of our club nets and participate in our upcoming public service activities. This is NT5TM.
Yes, this is WB50ZL. It's not just in color, it's in Technicolor, which in 1961 was still kind of a new thing, such as they advertised it. Let's see, the Amateur Radio Group, Amateur Radio Satellite Group, and TwoNetsNet.com. It's in Houston. Okay, let's skip over all these other net things. Tonight's Afterglow movie. Tom, KE5ICX, would you please do the honors?
Absolutely. Here we go. Test pilot Matt Powell looked at the continuing thinning atmosphere outside the window. The X-15 continued climbing ever closer to the edge of space. Powell thought, is this when I go through the time barrier and return to a future Earth populated by apes? No, unlikely. Is it a moment where the solid rocket doesn't quit and my X-15 heads into orbit and I never see the surly bonds of Earth again? Probably not. What about if I pass out and wake up in the 25th century where rulers wear skull caps and laugh maniacally? Instead, the rocket engine sputtered to a stop and the X-plane headed back to Earth. Join us for another who knows what the hell it will be moment with the largely forgotten movie X-15. That's X-Ray 15. Bring your flight suit tonight at 10:30 p.m. This is KE5ICX. Back to net control.
Okay, I can hardly wait. Additional check-ins. Do we have any? Please come now. Okay, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events. When and where you can look through a telescope. Is there anybody on the net tonight that can tell us about that? said they didn't have any star parties tonight. I don't know how far you'd have to go to get clear skies. TAS monthly meetings. They're held on the fourth Friday of every month except December at the University of Texas at Dallas campus in Richardson. The meeting begins at 7:30 p.m. in the Science Learning Center building, SLC, on the campus map. Only park in lots H, J, I, or J. Parking anywhere else on campus could result in a ticket. And you can go onto our website for the map to the location. The meeting includes programs presented by members or guest speakers, a slideshow of the current constellation of the month, items for sale such as t-shirts, books, and observing aids. You can find out more about TAS of Dallas at www.texasastro.org. Is anybody on frequency that would like to talk about the TAS? Friday night, beginning at sunset and concluding around 10 p.m. Central Time. Each week is a different location for observing, so make sure you get complete details for the Saturday night you wish to attend. Go to www.texasastro.org and selection calendar in the pull down for complete details. I won't ask if anybody is at a star party. I'm sure you're not. Okay, National Space Society events and activities. We'll call on Bill, N5BB.
BB. Well, unfortunately, I won't be able to go to the National Space Society meeting tomorrow because I'll be at the airport getting ready to taking off for an out-of-town business trip. But the National Space Society September meeting, as always, will be on the second Sunday of the month. That's tomorrow. The meeting starts around 3:30. The presentation will be at 4. The location is the Spring Creek Barbecue in Irving on the southwest corner of Beltline and Highway 183, across the street from Irving Mall. The subject tomorrow will be Mars exploration and settlement. I don't have a lot of additional information. I really don't have anything else since the information I gave last week. And 5BB, thank you.
Thanks, Bill. I'd like to add that they're having a sort of a mini conference the last Saturday of October. It's going to be at the Northeast Texas Girl Scouts facility in South Dallas. They had one last fall, and I went, and it was fabulous for a small event like that. So check their website and see if you can check it out. I won't get to go this year because I will be at the air show at Dallas Executive, the CAF air show. I'm working that day, so I will miss it, and I'm very sorry. But I hope somebody else can go if they want to.
Comment, N5BB.
Go ahead, N5BB.
Unless it's been updated very recently, the website is frozen for the North Texas chapter of the National Space Society. Their Facebook page is updated, though, N5BB.
Oh, I didn't know that. I get a copy of their newsletter every month. I just got one Friday, so I read about that. So I know it's good information. I get a complimentary copy because I work for the museum, and I read it. It's a wonderful website. It's actually worth the price of joining the organization, and these are not that much. Okay, any more check-ins?
Is Kilo Golf 5, Echo India Uniform, David, St. Paul, Texas.
Hey, we recognize Kilo Golf 5, Echo India Uniform, David. Welcome to the net. All right, tonight's featured presentation is going to be about the North American X-15. And you may say, why are we talking about an airplane? Because it was more than just an airplane. It went into space. And the pilots that flew it over 50 miles got astronaut wings. They were considered astronauts. And several of them went on to be in the NASA astronaut program. So the X-15 was a hypersonic rocket-powered aircraft. Now, hypersonic means faster than Mach 5. Supersonic is faster than Mach 1. And basically, NACA put out bids for this aircraft. What they needed was information on space. We didn't know what was there. We didn't know how it would operate or how humans would operate. And before we could have a space program, we needed to go out there and see what it was like. So the program was operated by the U.S. Air Force and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration as part of the X-plane series of experimental aircraft. The X-15 set speed and altitude records in the 1960s, reaching the edge of outer space and returning with valuable data used in aircraft and spacecraft design. The X-15's official world record for the highest speed ever recorded by a manned-powered aircraft set in October 1967 when William J. Knight flew Mach 6.72 at 102,100 feet, a speed of 4,520 miles an hour. And that has remained unchallenged as of this date. In the X-15 program, 13 flights by 8 pilots met the Air Force spaceflight criterion by exceeding the altitude of 50 miles, thus qualifying these pilots as being astronauts. The Air Force pilots qualified for astronaut wings immediately, while the civilian pilots were eventually awarded the NASA astronaut wings in 2005, 35 years after the last X-15 flight. The only Navy pilot in the X-15 program never took the aircraft above the requisite 50-mile altitude and thus never earned astronaut wings. It was based on a concept study from Walter Dornberger for the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, for a hypersonic research aircraft. The requests for proposal, RFPs, were published in 30 December 1954 for the airframe and on 4 December 1955 for the rocket engine. X-15 was built by 2 manufacturers. North American Aviation was contracted for the airframe in November 1955, and Reaction Motors was contracted for building the engines in 1956. Like many X-series aircraft, the X-15 was designed to be carried aloft and drop-launched from the wing of a NASA B-52 mothership. The Air Force NB-52A, the High and Mighty one, and NB-52B, the Challenger, served as carrier planes for all X-15 flights. Release took place at an altitude of about 8.5 miles and a speed of about 1,500 miles per hour. The X-15 fuselage was long and cylindrical with rear fairings that flattened in its appearance. A thick dorsal and ventral wedge fin stabilizers. Parts of the fuselage were heat resistant. Nickel alloy, that's Inconel X750. The retractable landing gear comprised a nose wheel carriage and 2 rear skids. The skids did not extend beyond the ventral fin which required the pilot to jettison the lower fin just before landing. The lower fin was recovered by parachute. X-15 was the product of developmental research, and changes were made to various systems over the course of the program and between the different models. The X-15 was operated under several different scenarios, including attachment to a launch aircraft, drop, main engine start and acceleration, ballistic flight into thin airspace, re-entry into thicker air, unpowered glide to landing, and direct landing without a main engine start. The main rocket engine operated only for a relatively short part of the flight, but boosted the X-15 to its high speeds and altitudes. Without main engine thrust, the X-15's instruments and control surfaces remained functional, but the aircraft could not maintain altitude. Because the X-15 also had to be controlled in an environment where there was too little air for aerodynamic flight control surfaces, it had a reaction control system that used rocket thrusters. There were two different X-15 pilot control setups. One used 3 joysticks, the other 1 joystick. The X-15 type with multiple control sticks for the pilot placed a traditional rudder and stick between a left joystick that sent commands to the reaction control system, and a third joystick on the right used during high G maneuvers to augment the center stick. In addition to pilot input, the X-15 stability augmentation system sent inputs to the aerodynamic controls to help the pilot maintain attitude control. The reaction control system could be operated in 2 modes, manual and automatic. The automatic mode used a feature called reaction augmentation system that helped stabilize the vehicle at high altitude. The RAS was typically used for approximately 3 minutes of an X-15 flight before automatic power off. The alternative control setup used the MH-96 flight control system, which allowed 1 joystick in place of 3 and simplified input. The MH-96 could automatically blend aerodynamic and rocket controls depending on how effective each system was at controlling the aircraft. Among the many controls were the rocket engine throttle and control for jettisoning the ventral tail fin. Other features of the cockpit included heated windows to prevent icing and a forward headrest for periods of high deceleration. X-15 had an ejection seat designed to operate at speeds up to Mach 4 or 120,000 feet of altitude, although it was never used during the program. Thank goodness. It was one of the most complex ejection seats that has ever been produced. And I just can't imagine doing that at Mach 4. In the event of ejection, the seat was designed to deploy fins, which were used until it reached a safer speed altitude at which to deploy its main parachute. Pilots wore pressure suits, which could be pressurized with nitrogen gas. About 35,000 feet altitude, the cockpit was pressurized to 3.5 psi with nitrogen gas, while oxygen for breathing was fed separately to the pilot. There were only 3 of them built. One of them crashed, and it was destroyed. The other 2 are on display. One is at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., and one is at Dayton, at the Air Force Museum. There are a couple of mock-ups out there, but if you want to see one, a real one, that's the only places that you can go. Basically, the program was over when we started, had a real space program going, and but it did many things to set the stage for space flight. I don't think we'd have a space program if it hadn't been for all the hard work of the X-15 people. Those important discoveries was that the hypersonic boundary layer flow is turbulent and not laminar. Discovery that turbulent heating rates are significantly lower than they had been predicted by theory. The first direct measurement of hypersonic aircraft skin friction, a discovery that skin friction is lower than had been predicted. Discovery of hotspots, surface irregularities. These last four discoveries, including the space shuttle. Demonstration of a pilot's ability to control a rocket-boosted aerospace vehicle through atmospheric exits. So, as you can see, it's a fascinating aircraft. I may do another segment on this in the future because there is so much here that we just can't cover in 10 minutes. And to me, it is just an absolutely fascinating program that a lot of people really don't know much, if anything, about. Okay, well, that's all I have. This is Derry B5OZL. Do we have any more check-ins? Okay, what can you see in the sky over the next couple of weeks? Let's see, is that KE5ICX? Is that your segment? It doesn't have your name by here, so I'm not really sure.
Yes, that would be me.
Please do go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Brenda. This is KE5ICX, and this information comes from earthsky.org/tonight. You can check this out any day of the week, including going forward several days in time, but you just go to the website there with the /tonight. You can pick tonight or any other night for about a week ahead of time as to what you can see. So, this is what they say. Tonight or on any autumn evening, Cassiopeia, the Queen, can be found in the northeast after sunset. This constellation has a distinctive shape of a W or an M, depending on the time of night that you see it. The shape of this constellation makes Cassiopeia's stars very noticeable. Look for the Queen starting at nightfall or early evening. Cassiopeia represents an ancient queen of Ethiopia. The entire constellation is sometimes also called Cassiopeia's chair, and some old star maps depict the queen sitting on the chair, marked by 5 of the brightest stars in the constellations. They are, and I hope I say this right, Shadar, Keph, Gamma, Cassiopeia, Rukba, and Sigan. If you are in a dark sky, you can look below Cassiopeia in the northeast on these autumn evenings for the famous binocular object. The object is called the double cluster of Perseus. These are open star clusters, each of which consists of young stars still moving together from the primordial cloud of gas and dust that gave birth to the cluster stars. These clusters are familiarly known as stargazers as H and Chi Persei. Gazers smile when they peer at them at night through their binoculars, not only because they are beautiful, but also because of their names. They are named from 2 different alphabets, the Greek and the Roman. Stars have Greek letter names, but most star clusters don't. Johann Bayer, 1572 to 1625, gave Chi Persei the cluster on the top its Greek letter name. Then it said he ran out of Greek letters. That's when he used the Roman letter, the letter H, to name the other cluster. night, Cassiopeia swings above Polaris, the North Star. Before dawn, she's found in the northwest, but during the evening hours, Queen Cassiopeia lights up the northeast sky. So the bottom line is the constellation Cassiopeia, the Queen, has a distinct shape of a W or M. Find her in the northwest sky in September and October evenings. Next is from the U.S. Naval Observatory. Obviously, we've not had the best of evenings when it comes to star observing, so some of these items have already taken place, and we won't see them anyway. But this is what they have to say. The moon spends most of the week as a slender crescent in the twilight hours before sunrise and after sunset, centered by the occurrence of the new moon, which falls on the 9th at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Early in the week, you'll find her moving through the bright stars of the Great Winter Circle. By week's end, she reappears in the evening sky, closing in on dazzling Venus in the deepening twilight after sunset. Rapidly lengthening nights of September offer a great view of the summer's signature constellations. This week, one of these, Cygnus the Swan, is our focus for the September Globe at Night Citizen Science Observing Campaign. Cygnus is easy to find, passing directly overhead in temperate northern latitudes between 9 and 10 p.m. local time. The Swan's brightest star is Deneb, which is the faintest and easternmost star in the large asterism popularly known as the Summer Triangle. Deneb translates as the tail, and it marks the tail of the celestial swan. If you have a reasonably dark sky, you can easily trace the swan's neck into the center of the Summer Triangle, where its head is marked by the third magnitude star Albireo. Crossing the imaginary line between Deneb and Albireo is another line made up of second and third magnitude stars. The brightest of these is the central star in the constellation Satyr. With a little imagination, you can visualize the swan in flight along the star clouds of the Milky Way. Other cultures have different interpretations. One of my favorites comes from the Inuit mythology, which describe the image of a man sitting on a kayak paddling along a pebbly river, their description of the Milky Way. The star Albireo is a wonderful target for small telescopes, one of the most colorful double stars in the skies. Are easily split with a 2-inch aperture, and colors blue and gold-yellow give rise to a nickname for the pair, the Navy Double. During the course of the week, locate Cygnus in the sky overhead and compare the number of stars that you see with the star charts on the Globe at Night website. Try to make multiple observations on different nights from different locations. Your report will help to monitor the global distribution of light pollution that is encroaching on our nighttime skies. Hours of evening darkness showcase the splendors of the summer sky. The softly glowing clouds of the summer Milky Way will dominate the view from dark sky locations. You'll notice that the brightest parts of the Milky Way will be in the southern part of the sky, just to the right of the teapot asterism of the constellation Sagittarius, the Archer. We'll look in this direction. We are gazing toward the center of our galaxy, located some 30,000 light years away. You can actually see the galactic center, but the huge bulge of stars surrounding the center make the region stand out nicely. Sweep your low-power telescope up along the Milky Way for one of the most spectacular parts of the sky above us. On to the planets. Bright Venus may be found in the west-southwest during our first hour after sunset. She hangs less than 10 degrees above the horizon at sunset and is just 5 degrees up an hour after the sun goes down. Fortunately, she is reaching her brightest stage of the current apparition right now, so you shouldn't have much difficulty locating her. Act quickly, since she sets before 9 p.m. local time. Jupiter also hangs in the twilight sky in the southwest, and although he's much fainter than Venus, he should still be easy to pick out as darkness settles. Old Jove stays around a bit longer than Venus does, but he also exits the scene early in the evening, setting around 10 p.m. You'll have to get him in an eyepiece shortly after he appears in the twilight to get a good view of him before he settles into the horizon haze. enjoys hours of good viewing time, crossing the meridian just after 8 p.m. The ring planet reaches the second stationary point in this year's apparition at around 6 on the 6th, and gradually resumes direct west-to-east motion over the next few days. He is located against the background of one of Milky Way's dense star clouds, so picking out his fainter moons is complicated by the stellar backdrop. And then finally, Mars continues to beam down brightly from his perch among the faint stars of Capricornus. The red planet will also resume direct motion against the stars, and over the course of the next several months, he'll zip through the autumnal constellations while gradually fading. He will remain visible in the evening sky until well into 2019, but he will be much dimmer object by then. He still shows a relatively large telescopic disk, but his size will shrink by about 25% over the course of the next month. And that is it from me, from the two websites, earthsky.org and, of course, the U.S. Naval Observatory. Just type in U.S. Naval Observatory, what you can see in the sky, and it will give you the website directly, since their website isn't the easiest one to give out over the air. This is KE5ICX, back to net control.
This is WB5OZL. Do we have any additional check-ins? Please come now. I will turn this over to Carolyn, KC5OZT, for a tour of the Constellation Cepheus. Go ahead, Carolyn.
This is KC5OZT, and tonight we are going to look at Cassiopeia's husband, Cepheus, 27th largest constellation, and like I say, husband of Cassiopeia and father of Andromeda, which are neighboring constellations. This whole legend associated with them is all in this area of the sky. Cepheus ruled stretch of land with modern-day Egypt, Israel, and Jordan, and his wife was a very vain woman. And once she boasted she was more beautiful than the sea nymphs. You know, one of the wives of one of the sea nymphs was Poseidon, which angered him. So he sent a sea monster, represented by Cetus, constellation Cetus the whale, to ravage the land of the Cepheus. Oracle advised them that the only way to appease Poseidon was to sacrifice their daughter Andromeda to the monster. Desperate, the parents did this, leaving their daughter chained to the rock for Cetus to find. Luckily, though, the Hebrew Perseus found her first, rescued her, and killed the monster. And later he claimed her as his bride. And then, during their wedding, I won't say what broke out, but Cepheus' brother and his followers turned up claiming that she had been promised to them first. And Cepheus refused, and a fight began. Perseus tried to fight off all his opponents, but was outnumbered. So he used the head of the Medusa to turn his enemies into stone. Unfortunately, though, the king and queen did not look away from the Gorgon's head in time and were turned to stone too. And so Zeus placed them in the sky. And there's some interesting stars. The brightest star, of course, is Alpha, magnitude 2.5, and it's a Class A star, and it never sets below the horizon when observed from Europe, Northern Asia, Canada, and most North American cities. I forgot to check and see if, I'm not sure it might, if it stays above the horizon here or not, but I don't have time to calculate it, but anyway, it's interesting, and let me read. And as you know, we've always heard of the Cepheid variable stars. Well, the prototype of this class is Delta Cepheus. It's a double star. It varies between 3.48 and 4.37. And the only star in this class closer to the solar system, of course, is the North Star, Polaris. And the variations in luminosity and spectral type result from the pulsation of the star. And the reason they are important, they're sort of a measuring stick for galaxies and a lot of objects. So let me reset. Your dying high-mass stars can be seen with the naked eye. Some of them, and then of course a telescope too, but they're easily found in the neighboring galaxies, and the luminosities are tied to their periods. So all the astronomers need to do is measure the visual magnitude to determine their distance and the distances to the galaxies where they're located. That was the first way of measuring the distance to most galaxies. And we have a nice, beautiful star, Mu Cepheus, known as the Garnet Star. It's a red supergiant at magnitude 4.08. One of the most luminous stars known. And William Herschel named it the Garnet Star, and described it as a very fine, deep garnet color. It's an M class, bright supergiant, and one of the largest stars ever observed in the entire galaxy. If it wasn't obscured by the interstellar dust, it would have an apparent magnitude of 1.97. And it's also a prototype for a class of variables known as, of course, the Mu Cepheus variables. But there's not a recognizable pattern to them like the Cepheids. But it is an old star. It has begun to fuse helium into carbon and is approaching its final stages of life. It's unstable and expected to explode as a supernova in the near future, maybe several millions of years. Moving on to the deep sky objects, we have several, and the first one is NGC 6946, known as the Fireworks Galaxy. It's an intermediate spiral at magnitude 9.6, and it's easy to find. It lies on the border between Cepheus and Cygnus. And it was also discovered by William Herschel. and worth keeping an eye on, because 9 supernovae have been observed in it over the last century in 1917, 1939, 1948, 1968, and then again in 1969, 1980, 2002, 2004, 2008, and I think another one since then. I'm not sure which year. And then we have the Wizard Nebula, NGC 7380. This is an open star cluster discovered by Caroline Herschel in 1787. And it's embedded in a nebula about 110 light years in size. And the stars in it, though, are less than 5 million years old, making it a very young open cluster. And the number 3 picture, NGC 7023, is known as the Iris Nebula, as in the flower of the iris. It's a reflection nebula at magnitude 6.8. And this is really a star cluster embedded inside a nebula. And it is lit by the star, long name, SAO 1915-8. And it lies close to 2 bright stars, T Cepheus, that's a variable, and Beta Cepheus at magnitude 3.23, so that makes it sort of easy to find. And number 4 of the picture is NGC 7129, the Rosebud Nebula. It's an open cluster star-forming region located in a foot reflection nebula that has the shape of a rosebud. Now, this is magnitude 11.5, so you definitely need a scope, but contains more than 130 young stars, and it's believed to be less than 1 million years old. And if you look nearby, you find NGC 7142, another open cluster, a little brighter, 9.3. And it's believed to be obscured by a cloud. And that cluster is thought to be one of the oldest open clusters known, even though it's hard to determine for sure. Even though I don't have a picture of them, there's also 2 more objects on the chart that you can try to find. NGC 7538, a mission or a reflection nebula that contains the biggest protostar. That's a large mass formed inside a molecular cloud that's been discovered. This protostar is 300 times the size of the solar system. And the last object is NGC 188, an open star cluster, and easy to find. This is about 5 degrees away from the North Pole. And it's one of the oldest known open clusters. So Cepheus the King, he has some mighty fine objects inside his boundaries there. So take a tour through this constellation and you will really enjoy it. So unless there's any questions, I'll turn it back to you, Brenda, KC50ZT.
That's Carolyn. Do we have any additional check-ins? This is Study B50ZL. Day 10, I am going to talk about recent astronomical discoveries. The first article is entitled Galactic Wind Stifling Star Formation is Most Distant Yet Seen. For the first time, a powerful wind of molecules has been detected in a galaxy located 12 billion light years away. Probing a time when the universe was less than 10% of its current age, the University of Texas at Austin astronomer John Spilker's research sheds light on how the earliest galaxies regulated the birth of stars to keep from blowing themselves apart. The research will appear in the September 7th issue of the journal Science. Galaxies are complicated, messy beasts, and we think outflows and winds are critical pieces to show how they form and evolve, regulating their ability to grow, Spilker said. Some galaxies, such as the Milky Way and Andromeda, have relatively slow and measured rates of starburst, with about one new star igniting each year. Other galaxies, known as starburst galaxies, form hundreds or even thousands of stars each year. The furious pace, however, cannot be maintained indefinitely. To avoid burning out in a short-lived blaze of glory, some galaxies throttle back their runaway starburst by ejecting, at least temporarily, vast stores of gas into their expansive halos, where the gas either escapes entirely or slowly rains back in on the galaxy, triggering future bursts of star formation. Now, however, astronomers have been unable to directly observe these powerful outflows in the very early universe, where such mechanisms are essential to prevent galaxies from growing too big too fast. Spilker's observations with the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array, ALMA, show for the first time a powerful galactic wind of molecules in a galaxy seen where the universe was only 1 billion years old. This result provides insights into how certain galaxies in the early universe were able to self-regulate their growth so they can continue forming stars across the cosmic time. Astronomers have observed winds with the same size, speed, and mass in nearby starbursting galaxies, but the new ALMA observation is the most distant, unambiguous outflow ever seen in the early universe. The galaxy, known as SPT 2319-55, is more than 12 billion light years away. It was discovered by the National Science Foundation's South Pole Telescope. ALMA was able to observe this object at such tremendous distance with the aid of a gravitational lens provided by a different galaxy that sits almost exactly along the line of sight between Earth and SPT 2319-55. Gravitational lensing, the bending of light due to gravity, magnifies the background galaxy to make it appear brighter, which allows astronomers to observe it in more detail than they would otherwise be able to. Astronomers use specialized computer programs to unscramble the effects of gravitational lensing to reconstruct an accurate image of the more distant object. Lens-aided view revealed a powerful wind of star-forming gas exiting the galaxy at nearly 800 kilometers per second. Rather than a constant, gentle breeze, the wind is hurtling away in discrete clumps, removing the star-forming gas just as quickly as the galaxy can turn that gas into new stars. The outflow is detected by the millimeter wavelength signature of a molecule called hydroxyl, OH, which appeared as an absorption line, essentially the shadow of an OH fingerprint in the galaxy's bright infrared light. Molecular winds are an efficient way for galaxies to self-regulate their growth, the researchers note. These winds are probably triggered by either the combined efforts of all the supernova explosions that go on with rapid, massive star formation, or by a powerful release of energy as some of the gas in the galaxy falls down onto the supermassive black hole at its center. So far, we've only discovered one galaxy at such a remarkable cosmic distance, but we'd like to know if winds like these are also present in other galaxies to see just how common they are, Spolker concluded. If they occur in basically every galaxy, we know that molecular winds are both ubiquitous and also a really common way for galaxies to self-regulate their growth. Article is entitled, Pluto should be reclassified as a planet, experts say. Yeah, I'm with them on that. I miss Pluto. I want it back. I like little Pluto. The reason Pluto lost its planet status is not valid, according to new research from the University of Central Florida in Orlando. In 2006, the International Astronomical Union, a global group of astronomy experts, established a definition of a planet that required it to clear its orbit, or in other words, be the largest gravitational force in its orbit. Since Neptune's gravity influences its neighboring planet Pluto, and Pluto shares its orbit with frozen gases and objects in the Kuiper Belt, that meant Pluto was out of planet status. However, in a new study published online Wednesday in the journal Icarus, UCF planetary scientist Philip Metzger, who is with the University's Florida Space Institute, reported that this status for classifying planets is not supported in the research literature. Metzger, who is lead author on the study, reviewed scientific literature from the past 200 years and found only one publication from 1802 that used the clearing orbit requirement to classify planets, and it was based on since disproven reasoning. Says moons such as Saturn's Titan and Jupiter's Europa have been routinely called planets by planetary scientists since the time of Galileo. The IAU definition would say that the fundamental object of planetary science, the planet, is supposed to be on the basis of a concept that nobody uses in their research, Metzger said. And it would leave out the second most complex, interesting planet in our solar system. We now have a list of well over 100 recent examples of planetary scientists using the word planet in a way that violates the IAU definition, but they are doing it because it's functionally useful, he said. It's a sloppy definition, Metzger said, of the IAU's definition. They didn't say what they meant by clearing their orbit. If you take that literally, planets, because no planet clears its orbit. Planetary scientists said that the literature review showed that the real division between planets and other celestial bodies, such as asteroids, occurred in the early 1950s when Gerard Kuiper published a paper that made the distinction based on how they were formed. However, even this reason is no longer considered a factor that determines if a celestial body is a planet, Metzger said. Study co-author Kirby Runyon with Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory in Laurel, Maryland, said the IAU's definition was erroneous, since the literature review showed that clearing orbit is not a standard that is used for distinguishing asteroids from planets, as the IAU claimed when crafting the 2006 definition of planet. So that this is a false historical claim, Runyon said. It is therefore fallacious to apply the same reasoning to Pluto, he said. Metzger said that the definition of a planet should be based on its intrinsic properties rather than ones it can change, such as dynamics of a planet's orbit. Dynamics are not constant, they are constantly changing, Metzger said. So they are not the fundamental description of a body, they're just the occupation of a body at a current era. Instead, Metzger recommends classifying a planet based on if it is large enough that its gravity allows it to become spherical in shape. And that's not just an arbitrary definition, Metzger said. It turns out this is an important milestone in the evolution of a planetary body because apparently when it happens, it initiates active geology in the body. Pluto, for instance, has an underground ocean, a multi-layer atmosphere, organic compounds, evidence of ancient lakes, and multiple moons, he says. It's more dynamic and alive than Mars, Metzger said. The only planet that has more complex geology is the Earth. There. This is WV5OZL. Do we have any more check-ins?
Is November 5, Whiskey Oscar India, William and Allen.
I copy November 5, Whiskey Oscar India, William. Welcome to the net. Next segment will be brought to us by Tony, NT5TM, and this is about space exploration and space history. Go ahead, Tony.
Erin and I especially enjoyed that So There because she attended the UCF, so hearing that So There from her alma mater, she graduated from the UCF, excuse me. So that was especially nice coming from there. Pioneer radio astronomer Dame Jocelyn Bell Burnell contributed substantially to the discovery of pulsars, but of course she was not included in the Nobel Prize for that work. Instead, it was given to her male supervisor. However, she has not lacked for recognition, as you may have noticed from the fact that she has a knighthood. Among many other accolades, she was just this week awarded the $3 million Breakthrough Prize in Fundamental Physics for her work. She has shown her worth as a role model as well as an astronomer because she has donated the entire proceeds to establish a scholarship for women and minorities in physics. Curiosity rover has just completed a beautiful panorama taken under a very dusty red sky as the global dust storm is still not quite dissipated yet on Mars. It has also been in the news this week for finding rocks that are too hard for it to drill into at all. Unfortunately, there has still been no word from the Mars exploration rover Opportunity. Really amazing happened. On September 5th, 1977, Voyager 1 took to the sky. It's not easy to express just how impressive the Voyager program has been. The two probes are old enough that their children could have graduated from high school, and they might even have a grand probe on the way. But yet, they're still doing science. The Voyager interstellar mission is still active. They've even served as a lesson to computer folks. I read an article about them in an IT journal this week about how to write software that won't ever crash. Voyager 1, with its legacy of close visits to Jupiter and Saturn and a close flyby of Titan, turned 41 this week. NASA's amazing Dawn spacecraft will probably run out of fuel this month and fall silent. Dawn has been an amazing mission. It's been the first deep space probe to orbit more than one world. Voyager and the pioneers before it, well, they simply flew past. They couldn't make an orbit because they used conventional rocket engines and couldn't carry enough fuel. But Dawn has used ion propulsion, which has let it slowly lower itself into orbit around one asteroid, then climb back out, resume cruising, and go into orbit around another. All the excitement over the Voyager anniversary and over the Mars rovers has led you to forget Dawn. Have a look at the links to at w5sc.org, and please read up on Dawn's discoveries. It has been an amazing mission. yourself that quality control in U.S. spacecraft is better. Ha ha ha. Don't get too cocky. Speaking of space history, on this day in 2004, the sample return capsule from NASA's Genesis spacecraft smacked straight into the desert without opening its parachutes, because good old Americans with good old American know-how installed its gravity sensor upside down. Scientists were able to salvage some solar wind particles from the Genesis sample collector, but nevertheless, it was not a great triumph in quality control. In other space history, this week marks the birthdays of Soviet rocket engine designer Valentin Petrovich Glushko, Apollo spacecraft office head Joseph Francis Shea, cosmonaut Andrian Nikoliev, father of the first child born to two astronauts, he married Valentina Tereshkova, the physicist James A. Van Allen of Van Allen Belts fame, and the very first head of NASA, P. Keith Glennon. The saddest news item from space history this week happened in the Apollo program. On September 2nd, 1970, NASA canceled Apollo missions 15 and 19 and announced that the remaining missions would be designated Apollo 14 through 17. Because the required boosters and vehicles had already been completed and fully flight qualified, the total savings were restricted to the operations and mission control costs of only $42 million. This is NT5TM, and that was This Week in Space News and Space History.
Thank you very much, Tony. Do we have any additional check-ins?
F2W, Chris, and Rockwall.
F2W Curtis, welcome to the net. Okay, visible satellite passages over the next couple of days. KE5 ICX. Tom, would you like to cover this?
Brenda, I'd be happy to do so. This is KE5 ICX. I don't know what it is. Could be this time of the year, but visible satellite passages are a bit difficult. Some of our popular ones, such as the ISS, are not showing up on any charts anywhere. However, we do have a couple that do and are reliable in this regard. One of them is the Hubble Space Telescope, and the other one is Envisat, both which are in an inclined orbit. So let me see here. Let me give you those. Hubble Space Telescope does have a couple of passes that are of interest. September 9th is the first. This will be a 1.6 magnitude at 1938 local time. It reaches its highest point at 1941 at 45 degrees and then ends at 1941. So it goes into shadow. September 12th is another good one. Actually, there's three passes that day. The best one is the 1.2 magnitude at 5:30 a.m. It reaches its highest point at 5:34:54, 63 degrees, and then falls at 5:39. Good pass is on the 13th. Once again, it falls into that triplet, three passes that can be seen overhead. Highest one is the first one, 0.8 magnitude at 5:20 a.m. Out of the west-northwest, reaches its highest point at 5:24, and then falls at 5:28. That's a pretty darn good pass. Let me look at that one real quick, if it'll let me. Oh, it may not. Okay, I won't then. I think I just sabotaged my passes here. See if I can go back one here. Maybe I'm looking at this at the heavens-above.com website, and it's just moving really slow tonight. Let's go to Envisat, if it will let me. I just, well, wow. Maybe I won't. It's just slowed to a crawl. Well, I can tell you this, at least I can't go to the hot links, but there is a great pass on September 10th, full pass north to south, another one on September 13th, and then a third one on September 15th. All this information, you can go to heavens-above.com. There's a hyphen between heavens and above.com. Plug in your longitude and latitude. Yeah, you can find that elsewhere. And you'll be able to get all the passes customized for your location. So I guess that's going to be it from me today. It's going to be abbreviated. Back to you, Net Control, KE5ICX.
Hey, Tom. Okay, I think we're going to probably wrap it up a little bit early tonight. Do we have any last-minute check-ins?
I-5 VFO, this is Bill from Dallas, Texas.
Bill, please come back with your call sign.
I-5 VFO, Bravo, Foxtrot, Oscar.
Hey, KF5 BFO. Bill, thanks for joining us. So we have 20 check-ins this evening. So I want to thank everybody who checked in, and we hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and all the other DARC nets. If you would like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net astronomy in general on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to the w5fc.org at the you just said on my keyboard, and I lost my script. Well, I am sorry. Anyway, I guess we're done. Okay, at 10:30, we're going to have the Afterglow movie net. The movie tonight is X-15. So, meet us there at 10 if you would like to participate in that. You don't have to have seen the movie. You can talk about the plane if you want to, or movies in general. Anyway, we'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll see you here. WV5OZL.
Thank you, Brenda, for doing the net. Great job. KE5ICX.
Yeah, thanks for a great net, everyone, and that call, that check-in with the BFO. I know us old hands will appreciate that call sign. Anyway, thanks again. K5, JDW.
This is N5BB. Is the audio making it through?
When your audio was very low, you held the repeater, but your audio was very low, NT5TM.
Okay, Tony, I'm on Echolink on my iPad. Lost power here a little over 30 minutes ago at my house. And can't hit the repeater on the talkie. I can hear it, but can't hit it. So I'm going to have to use Echolink to transmit at least. N5BB.
Hey, Bill, it took me a while to figure out that was you.
Not sure what's going on, Tony. Some noise came up, a rushing noise, and covered you up. N5BB.
It's good to hear you.
I-5 BFO, thank you for the call back, and I am rolling in my car right now with my HT, so my signal may not be so strong.
Okay, actually, station ending VFO, you sound great. There was another person, N5BB, a regular on our late night nets, who was very hard to hear because he was using Echolink on his iPad, which I don't think describes your situation. But no, you sound great, NT5TM.
F8.
Completely operational, and all my circuits are functioning perfectly.
Afterglow Movie Net.
Hey, it's time for the Afterglow Movie Net. And tonight's movie is X-15. I think before we take check-ins, we'll see if Tom, KE5ICX, wants to give us his brilliant synopsis of this movie. Are you there, Tom?
Yes, I'm here, and my brilliant synopsis is because I have access to Wikipedia. So here we go. This film, X-15, is a 1961 dramatic aviation film that presents a fictionalized account of the X-15 research rocket aircraft program. The test pilots who flew the aircraft and the associated NASA community that supported the program. X-15 starred David McLean, Charles Bronson, yeah, that Charles Bronson, Mary Tyler Moore, yes, that Mary Tyler Moore, in her first feature film role, Kenneth Tobey and James Gregory. The film marked the directorial debut of Richard Donner, yes, that Richard Donner, and was narrated by, you guessed it, that James Stewart. Edwards Air Force Base involves test pilot civilian Matt Powell. Lieutenant Colonel Lee Brandon, played by Charles Bronson, and Major Ernest Wild. The cutting-edge high-speed program is ramrodded by Project Chief Tom DeParma, played by James Gregory, and U.S. Air Force Colonel Craig Brewster, played by Kenneth Tobey. As the test pilots prepare for the planned launch of the rocket-powered aircraft from the B-52 Stratofortress mothership, they experience emotional and physical problems, which they share with their wives and sweethearts. Yeah, I'm sorry. Test after test results in setbacks, including a near disaster, when an engine explodes during a ground test and engulfs the X-15 and its pilots in flames. But finally, the X-15 begins to set records in speed and altitude for the piloted aircraft. When the X-15 flames out on a high-altitude run after guiding the X-15 to a safe landing, saving Powell's life, Lieutenant Colonel Brandon, flying a chase aircraft, is killed in the crash. Powell himself takes the X-15 into outer space for the final test. I'm going to read a little bit more here because that was so short and everybody's going, geez, is this a good movie or not? So this is what they say. Originally planned around the earlier NASA Bell X-2 program, writer-producer and later screenwriter Tony Lazzarino shopped the project around Hollywood in 1958, appearing under several titles: Exit, Time of Departure, and Beyond the Unknown. Lazzarino was successful in teaming with Bob Hope, yes, that Bob Hope, who wanted to produce the film. After approaching the U.S. Air Force for stock footage of X-2 flights, the Pentagon made a recommendation that the newly introduced X-15 aircraft held out much more promise as a film subject. $350,000 assigned for primary shooting, with an additional $72,500 for post-production work. By August of 1960, pre-production had moved from Hope Enterprises to Frank Sinatra's Essex Productions. After reviewing the initial draft screenplay, Pentagon suggestions clarified that the X-15 test program would be the focus of the upcoming production. Pentagon assistance was largely responsible for the addition to detail and accurate portrayal of the NASA program. Much of the principal photography for the film was undertaken at Edwards Air Force Base and at the NASA High Speed Flight Station, now Dryden Flight Research Center, now Neil Armstrong Flight Research Center, in California, with the direct assistance of NASA, the United States Air Force, and North American Aviation. USAF Captain Jay Hankson and NASA research pilot Milton Orville Thompson served as technical advisors on the film. Thompson himself would become an X-15 pilot. Featured carefully edited NASA footage of X-15 flights intercut with original photography, with a minimum of special effects using animation. In a pivotal scene of the chase aircraft chasing X-15 used U.S. Air Force archival footage of the Sabre Dance crash of an North American F-100 Super Sabre. Another critical scene involved the X-15-3 being destroyed on a test stand when the rocket engine exploded, using stock footage from the accident. And that's all I'm going to tell you about this. Back to Net Control. This is KE5ICX. It's me!
This is WB50ZL. I will now take check-ins. Give me your name, your call sign, your name. I'm fighting with a cat over my writing pad. Your QTH, and whether or not you saw the movie. So please come now. Short time, low power first. General check-ins, please.
This is November 5, Bravo, Bravo. Bill in Irving, now with AC power after a 45-minute outage. And due to the power outage, I didn't finish the movie, so I saw the first portion of the movie.
The 5, Tango Mike. Tony in Dallas. I have an X-15 comment or two, but I was not able to see the movie.
Charlie 5, Oscar Zulu Tango, Carolyn in Louisville, and I did see the movie.
Echo 5, India, Charlie X-ray, Tom. In Louisville, yes, I saw the movie.
Oh, Foxtrot 5, Tango Sierra Kilo, Pearl in Dallas. I did see the movie.
Echo Bravo Bravo, David in Dallas. Yes, I saw the movie.
Oh, 05, Juliet Delta Whiskey, also on DC Power, but by choice. John in Coppell, and I think I saw the movie a long time ago. I am just going to listen in while I'm working. K5 GDW.
November 5, Yankee Papa, Tom and Irving. I only watched part of the movie.
Kilo Golf 5, Bravo Zulu Whiskey, Jay, now Weatherford. I did see the film.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Papa Delta Sierra, Billy and Sherman. Watching the film now. I have about 15 more minutes to go to finish it.
Oh, 5, Papa Mike November, thanks for working so much.
I'm going to have to pick up a couple of those that were pretty much unreadable. But have N5BB Bill and T5TM Tony, KC5OZT Carolyn. The one after Carolyn, I couldn't read it all. If you remember what line you were in, if you can come back with your call sign, please.
Papa, when we're talking, I think extend the antenna. I did see the movie, KG5P.
Oh, very good, KG5P Mike. Next we have KE5ICX Tom, and KF5TSK Burl, W5EDD David, and K5JDW John, N5HYP Tom, KG5BZW Jay, stand by. KF5PDS Billy was next, and the one after that, I think I missed. If you can come back with that.
Golf
5, Papa Mike, November, James, Fort Worth.
Golf 5, let me have the rest of it again, please.
Golf 5, Papa Mike, November, James, Fort Worth. Call the movie.
Very good. KG5 PMN Mike. Or James, I'm sorry. Did I get everybody? If I skipped anybody, please come back now. Alrighty, well, let's jump in. This is a good, healthy bunch of check-ins. So, N5BD Bill, you seem part of it. Do you want to make a comment? We'll come back to Bill. NT5TM Tony, didn't see it, but has some X-15 comments. Go ahead.
I will pay attention tonight, and if you and the rest of the folks in the net like the movie, I will make sure to watch it tomorrow. I just ran out of time today. I fell behind. But yeah, I'd like to thank you and Tom for bringing up the X-15. I really like space history. That's an interest Aaron and I have in common. And I had not known that Walter Dornberger was so important in the X-15 program. I've been interested in him. He was sort of Werner von Braun's boss. And he even poached some people from the Redstone Army Arsenal over to the X-15 program. So thank you for bringing that up. I'm definitely going to learn more about the X-15. And I hope to hear if the movie's good or bad, NT5TM. I'm a little worried it has too many stars in it, but we'll find out.
Well, you never know about that. There are several astronauts that we all know that flew the X-15. Neil Armstrong did, and of course we know what he did. Then Joe Engle flew it, and he was a shuttle pilot, like did shuttle test flights. So, you know, there are some people that you know who flew, and Scott Crossfield, who's pretty famous in the world of aviation, also flew it. So I don't know why it's not more famous. There's so much information there that's just fabulous. I read a lot about it this week, and I'm just a total fan now. Okay, Carolyn, KC5OZT. What do you think of the movie plot?
I liked it. It seemed more sort of documentary style mixed in with human interest. But I like of course I like planes, so I love seeing all those. And then I like the human interest with wives and girlfriend in one case, and what they go through. It gave us very touching, point, and especially when we think that that's what the real astronauts' families go through. And anyway, I really liked it, and especially a lot of the details and stuff of KC5OZT.
And that's the way it was with the wives. They heard a crash or heard sirens, and they knew that somebody's husband wasn't coming home. And it was such a fearful time for these people. These women sacrificed a lot by having test pilots as husbands. And I thought it captured that part pretty accurately. Okay, KC5P, Mike, what you think of the plot?
Boys, I hope you can hear me. Well, I like these kind of movies. One thing I didn't like was maybe the part that was already mentioned that a lot of people like. That's all the romance and stuff. I think you could have left all that out of there. They had the long-suffering Air Force wives, and I'm not sure what Natalie Wood was doing in there. She was shacking up with her boyfriend, with her test pilot boyfriend. Today, nobody wouldn't even raise an eyebrow, but back then in the 60s, they probably would. And the plot was pretty fictional. I mean, yeah, the aircraft were there and stuff, but some of those things never happened. For example, the part about where they were testing out the engine and it blew up and destroyed one of the aircraft, that never happened. Another incident that never happened was that when the chase plane, the old F-100, that was piloted by old Charlie Bronson, Squinty Eyes Charlie, that never happened. They did lose the plane, but it wasn't until much later, and it was actually operating the X-15, and it got into a flat spin or something like that. So there was only one person killed, and he was actually a pilot. But it was pretty fictional. But other than that, you know, the flight sequences and stuff were pretty good. Back in that KG-5P.
And I read that footage on the test bed was actually happened was actual footage. I'm not sure it was a full aircraft. I think it was maybe an engine or something. Anyway, easy enough to find out on Wikipedia. KE5 ICX, Tom, what do you think of this movie?
Thank you, Brenda, and this is KE5ICX. Now, I had a kind of an interesting, unique experience when it came to this. I was off Thursday and Friday this week, took time off, and I'm off next week, yay. And I saw Strategic Air Command, it was over on Movies Channel Friday when I also watched this film in the evening. And so I got a lot of Jimmy Stewart. And I think I got kind of softened up a little bit after seeing that film, which I really enjoyed quite a bit, which was filmed over in Fort Worth, by the way. If anybody is interested, you can go find it on the interweb somewhere or watch it on Movies this week. You know, the station and that didn't bother me that much. This movie had a lot of the same elements, you know, how is the family going to stand up? How is this aircraft going to survive and prosper in a very high pressure world of leading edge technology? The whole thing with what's happening, is this thing going to fly or die or what? I mean, those pieces are pretty realistic. I can see that happening. I can see the problems, all of that, and family members and the pressure that goes along with it. I think today, if you were to redo this film, they would amp it up quite a bit, and they would allow some, real conversations involving family above and beyond what they did. There was a lot of scenes where, they're in the club there on base, and it's beautifully outfitted, and everybody said, just seems like it's just a normal thing when in fact it's not. So, yeah, this yin and yang thing going on. I'm kind of trying to process it in my mind now, which is why I'm kind of drawing this out a bit. But I didn't think it was a bad film. I thought overall, I thought that the plot was okay. Today we would do it a lot better, I think. But I think it had a lot going for it. So I'm going to stop now. I'm sure other folks have different comments to add. But I will say I enjoyed the plot. I'll go back and watch it again. KE5ICX.
Thanks very much, Tom. KF5TSK Burl, what'd you say to this film?
Well, when I look at the film, I enjoyed the historical significance of it, and really the characters and their interaction, and it reminded me of films of the 50s, but except for the historical and part of the film, I wouldn't watch it again, but I enjoyed watching it the first time. KF5TSK, back to that.
Thank you, Merle. David, W5EBB, what you think of it?
Well, it was a good movie to watch to get a basic degree of information about the X-15, which, like you say, I neither did I really know its significance. I thought the SR-71 was the one that had the altitude and speed records, but it's the X-15. Now, I watched the documentary on the X-15 just before I watched this movie yesterday, and the footage of the engine explosion was valid, and there was a pilot. It was the full X-2, I believe it was, X-15-2, and it did explode. The pilot said, it was current footage in the documentary that showed the actual pilot, and he said that there were flames all around him, and he kind of gets a lump in his throat when he recalled the fireman, the one fireman, come up and dousing water all over it and trying to disengage the canopy, and he could see his hands searing in heat. But ultimately, they both got out with just minor injuries, and so that was actually valid. Now, there were two other crashes, and they happened after this movie. One, upon landing, half of the plane basically collapsed, and I think he was an astronaut at that time officially, broke crushed three vertebrae. And of course, the third one, or the second crash, was a fatality in 1967, which, of course, the movie couldn't cover. It was originally ruled as vertigo and distraction by the pilot because of one of the 7 experiments that they had running, a probe, which I believe extended out of the nose, caused an electrical spark, and it was later determined that most likely it was the reaction control system that went into a feedback loop and got confused, which was likely the result of the crash. Now back to the plot. Of course, we've got romance, male and female, mother-father, traditional roles, and this plot was a blend of documentary, romance, adventure, and cigarette commercial, of course. When the first pilot gets out of the X-15, before he even gets out of his suit, he asks for a cigarette, and he gets one. And then Mary Tyler Moore lights up in her car. So, whenever you get a lot of a sponsorship of a movie like this, you do kind of question its intent, its veracity. And as was stated earlier, that footage, that chase plane never crashed in that manner. It just didn't happen. Of course, the names are all different too. But that's it for now. W5EBB.
Yeah, I was also confused by speed records, and the SR-71 and X-15 is different class of flying. I wish I could find the article. The term was that the SR-71 set the record for, I think the term they used was an air-breathing airplane, whatever that means. because its coast to coast was like 2,000 or 3,000 miles an hour, whereas X-15 went, 4,000 miles an hour, Mach 6, and SR-71 only went Mach 3. So I'm going to do some more research on it. Maybe that'll be the next segment that we do on this airplane, because it didn't make any sense to me. I have almost no experience with the X-15, but a lot of experience with the SR-71. And so I was kind of blown away by that, and definitely going to bear more study. All right, N5HYP Tom, go ahead.
Hey, this is N5HYP on Echo Link tonight. We didn't make it through.
HYP, are you there? Well, we'll come back to you. KG5 BZWJ, go ahead.
This is KG5BZW. Okay. So, yeah, just brief comment. Of course, main difference between, I just wanted a brief comment on the X-15 versus SR-71. Well, SR-71, uses actual ramjet. Well, maybe, I take that back. It's some sort of jet. I guess it might be ramjet, but I forget the actual jet technology. But the X-15 is, it's rocket powered. So that's the main thing is that. On to the plot. It wasn't bad. I just was a little bit annoyed. It was rather kind of predictable to me. Maybe this is just modern viewpoint on an old film, just kind of knowing how plots are generally written or whatnot, and how they were written. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense here, but there's just too many things I found a little bit too predictable. The way they just kind of ramped up to the explosion of the airplane, it's like it's the something's going to happen. Just the way they did it, which is just I'm sorry. It's when the ramp up is so obvious. It's just kind of annoying. And secondly, I don't know. Maybe it's because it's borderline character. It wasn't necessarily that it was him. I just had a feeling that it was going to be a support. The support aircraft that was going to crash. I just got that feeling. I'm not quite sure what elements led me to believe that, and of course that when it happened, it's like, oh wow, okay, sure, fine. Otherwise, let me reset. . All right. Not. I enjoyed it more for historical significance and just to learn how life was and how I enjoyed actually kind of watching some of the instruments being used, just to plot the physical plotter on a map to show where the airplane was, and just a lot of stuff that really wouldn't call it plot centric. Some other things I thought the plot was just a little bit weak, but I won't say that the film was bad. KG5BZW.
N5HYP, welcome back.
I was on Echolink in the car. We pulled in the driveway. It connected to the Wi-Fi, and I was gone. We did not watch the whole movie. It was really hard. The beginning was really hard because it felt like, folks in the early '60s. Many of them were around still during World War II and Korea and newsreels, and so the style even of Jimmy Stewart's narration and the style of the acting recreation in the initial scenes, very much newsreel-ish, and that was a real turnoff. A little bit more drama later on. There might have been a little more drama later on, but that newsreel-ish type feel really just turned us off. We couldn't continue on. We watched an even dumber movie, Jupiter Rising, after that, but that's another story. Anyway, back to Net from N5HYP. I won't be around for the next round.
Brady, KF5PDS. Billy, go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you, Brenda, and good evening, everyone. Yeah, I enjoyed the film. It was, part newsreel, part training film, part documentary, and part drama. It had a mixture of all kinds of elements that I thought came together to make a really interesting picture. And even, the intro and outro by Jimmy Stewart, it was just intro narration and then just closing statement. I thought that was interesting, but was it necessary? I don't know. To me, it added something, but yeah, it was very, but of the time, the newsreel type thing, which I thought was cool. I actually liked that. I also, I liked that they had the technicality in there, and then the behind the scenes showing the families. I thought it gave a very well-rounded picture of the situation and made it appealing to a wide audience. If they had left the technical only, sure, it would have been a good picture, but it wouldn't, I think it would have limited the audience reach, the reach to a wider audience, and made it even more obscure. But I think having the bit in there, the behind the scenes with the wives, girlfriends, and families, with the son and everything, it provides a very comprehensive picture and really draws you into their life, to show the life behind, a test pilot, what goes on in the day-to-day. And it was Mary Tyler Moore that played the girlfriend, not Natalie Wood, which I thought was an interesting choice because that was extremely early in her career, Mary Tyler Moore's. So I thought that was an interesting choice to play. And Patricia Owens always, she was in The Fly, so it was really cool to see a classic actress in there. And I thought the use of stars, it seemed star-studded when you read the names, but when you watch the picture, they're all such great character actors. They blend in and make a good picture, so it's not just a cast of thousands, like a whole bunch of, solo artists, playing to their own. There are a bunch of good character actors that play well as an ensemble. So I thought that made the plot, it didn't interrupt the plot any. You could get into the movie, but it did seem long, even at an hour and 40 minutes. Just to me, it kind of drug out and was slow in quite a few places, where I thought if they had included, I guess, more of the documentary footage, to move it along a little bit faster, it would have been fine. If they could have made it, an hour and a half or an hour and 20 minutes, it could have been a little shorter and moved along a little faster, I thought. But I loved the documentary footage, the real footage, and, the fact, they had NASA and the U.S. Air Force involved with actual footage and photography was awesome. It was really cool to see that. So it makes this movie kind of a hidden treasure. And if I were in the mood, I definitely would watch it again. And I loved that it was in Technicolor, and loved all the tech and the backdrop, and I always love watching 50s and 60s films for the design of it, the furniture and the wardrobe and the fashion of the times. I love watching movies for that aspect too. So I thought this was a very good film, very well-rounded, a little slow in places, but overall I enjoyed it. So with that, I'll return it to you. This is KF5 PDS. Back to net.
KG5PMN, James. I don't know whether you saw the movie. I don't have a note here. Did you see it, and what did you think of it?
So 5 Papa Mike November, James over in Fort Worth, and yes, I did see the movie. I thought it was a pretty good documentary, docudrama type movie. The family lifestyle on the small screen was kind of hard for me to follow. Couldn't hear the dialogue real well on parts of it. Thought the ammonia leak was kind of unnecessary under the door. If it had really been an ammonia leak, nobody would have walked out of that room alive. There's ammonia, and you can't breathe in ammonia. So didn't agree with that part of it too well. And I would have also thought the rocket would have blown up, or the plane would have blown up better in that engine explosion, but maybe that actually didn't happen then like I would have thought it would have. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good movie. KG5PMN, back to the net.
Hey, well, I really liked the movie. Of course, I love airplanes, and it was just one beautiful scene after another of airplanes flying, and the footage was just spectacular. So I enjoyed that a lot. As always, I kind of resent the way women are minimalized and treated like, silly people. But that was the times, and how many movies have we seen where the woman is there just to make coffee and sandwiches? I did find the reference I was talking about earlier on Wikipedia. If you look up SR-71, the Blackbird still holds the world record for the fastest air-breathing manned aircraft. Now, if you know what an air-breathing manned aircraft is, you can tell us in the next round. I don't know. It sounds like a mouth breather or something. I have no idea what that means. But if you do know, you can, enlighten us as we go along here. Otherwise, I'm going to look it up sometime in the near future. So that's, I guess, there are two different classes of airplanes or something with two different kinds of records. I don't know. The plot, it's okay. I mean, it was wasn't terribly involved, but it wasn't bad, I don't think. And would I watch it again? Yeah, I would. All right, do we have any new check-ins?
JDW with a comment.
K5 JDW, go ahead.
I don't remember if I saw the movie or not, but way back when, it seemed like all the rage was the X-15. It seemed like it's all they talked about, and of course they used it in other movies too, and it almost seemed like the big secret thing, but everybody talked about it, and they seemed to, I thought they actually covered it a lot. It was like the greatest thing since sliced bread, I thought, at least when I was a kid, it seemed like it was. And the air breather thing, I believe they're talking about vehicles that do not carry their own oxygen supply. So, you know, like if they have to operate in space, they have to carry their own oxygen supply. These are meant to work in air until it goes away, or at least, you know, in an atmosphere. So I believe that's what they're talking about there. K5JW.
Actually, the X-15, the pilot had his own air supply, and the interior of the cockpit had, I think, was filled with nitrogen, if I'm not mistaken. So, I don't know. We're going to find out. Well, of course, as a child, nobody ever told me about airplanes. It was a part of our world. And I heard about this plane, but not so much. But my experience, living in the world of airplanes for decades, is it's just not something people talk about a whole lot now. Maybe they did back then. But there's not nearly interest in it that I think there ought to be. I think it's an amazing part of history. All right, let's go back to the top. N5BD. What do you think about the characters and characterization? Not heard. NT5TM Tony, do you have more comments?
Thank you, Brenda. Not on characterization, but yeah, just to back up what John said, air breathing in the context of an engine means that it depends on oxygen from the air for combustion. It doesn't carry, fuming nitric acid or hydrogen peroxide or something as an oxidizer. And in fact, also that most of the working mass, most of what is pushed out the back of the engine to generate thrust, comes from the atmosphere around the engine. It wasn't carried there in the vehicle like it is in a rocket. So it depends on oxygen from the air, and it gets its working mass from the air around it. That's all I had, NT5TM.
Okay, well, that's great information. KC5OZT, Carolyn, what do you think about the characters?
Well, I think they seem pretty true to life, acting like real pilots, it wasn't... I mean, you could really believe you were actually seeing real personnel instead of actors. They did such a good job, and then the support staff in the control room, they well, of course I have to admit the computing equipment was sort of funny, but anyway, it all seemed true to life, just like never seen the NASA headquarters, but it seemed like they were all those characters were acting like real pilots, then of course the women and even the little boy, they seem true to life. That's sort of what the whole movie seemed like, true to life, again, like I said, almost like a documentary with the real characters, even though they were the actors, but that's sort of the way it struck me. KC5OZT.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. KG5P, what'd you think of the characters?
Okay, well, you were talking about the SR-71, before I talk about characters, and the X-15. Well, what I know about the X-15 is just out of the history books, but I do know from personal first-hand experience about the SR-71, because when I was in the Air Force, I was in the 9th Air Refueling Squadron, and we used to refuel the SR-71. So, I'll tell you a little bit about that. Okay, the talk about air breather, I think that, was it EBB? He said that they did not carry their own oxygen. Like any commercial aircraft flying today, it gets its oxygen, its oxidizer from the outside air. As did the SR-71. Now, the SR-71 burned a different type of fuel. Typically, jet aircraft today burn what's called JP4, which is basically a high-grade kerosene. The SR-71 burned a different fuel called JP7, and chemically it's different. It's aliphatic. The molecules are aliphatic. In other words, they're arranged in a straight line, as opposed to aromatic, which are circular ring-type compounds. But the reason for that is because the SR-71 would get so hot in flight that it would expand, so the fuel tanks would leak. And in an aircraft today, if the fuel was leaking out of the aircraft, you'd have a major problem. So Kelly Johnson said, well, we know these things are going to leak, so he had to develop a different kind of fuel. And this fuel has a much higher flash point. In fact, you couldn't start, they had to start out with a special chemical called tetraethylborane to ignite the stuff. The X-15, as opposed to breathing in the oxidizer from the air, it actually, they had to bring in their own oxygen along with them. It would have burned, was liquid, or used liquid oxygen as the oxidizer. And the fuel was anhydrous ammonia. Rockets today, they use hydrazine and stuff like that instead of anhydrous ammonia, but the oxidizer is still liquid oxygen. So that's the difference, is the SR-71, as any conventional aircraft would burn the outside air. Now, as far as the speed records go, being a so-called air breather, the maximum speed of the SR-71 was Mach 3. But the pilots, I knew the pilots that flew the SR-71, they wore these orange jumpsuits, and the patch on the side had 3+, and the plus was classified. It's not anymore. The plus is Mach 3.18, but at the time that was classified. But the X-15, I believe it was like a Mach 5 or something like that. It was actually, it went up much higher in altitude, maybe 100 miles or something like that, as opposed to 80,000 feet, which was the ceiling on the SR-71. So it was, in fact, an actual rocket, and as a result, it couldn't take off from a runway from a standing start. As in the movie, they hauled up with the B-52, and then it took off from there, and then it landed, because it had some little wings on it, and landing skids. I think somebody mentioned about a ramjet. The SR-71 really wasn't a true ramjet. A ramjet, a piece of pipe could be a ramjet if you get it moving fast enough, because the air coming into it is going to blow all the exhaust out the back, but you have to be going like 500 miles an hour or something like that before, or more than that even, I think. I don't even know what it is, because the only people that use ramjets were the Germans. In fact, that wasn't even a ramjet, those buzz bombs. But with the SR-71, it would be going fast enough. The compressor would actually windmill, so it acted like a ramjet. Typically, to get the exhaust to blow out the back and bring in the oxygen from the intake, they have to they run a compressor as any commercial jet engine does. And the SR-71 did that. It's just that when it got up to Mach 3, the compressor just kind of windmilled because it acted essentially like a ramjet. And the problem they had to figure out was, since it was going Mach 3, it created a shock wave, and what they had to keep the shock wave out of the engine, because if the engine adjusted the shock wave, it would flame out. And they did that by a computer system, and this is a computer developed in the 60s. So it was, the aircraft is incredible, way ahead of its time. But it would position this device called a spike, that cone thing that sticks out of the engine, that would move in and out to keep it from ingesting the shock wave. So that's, like I said, what I know about the X-15, I just saw the history books, but the SR-71, I was personally involved in that, at least from the operational end of it, and in a air refueling point of view. The actors were, old squinty-eyed Charlie Bronson. He's been in a lot of good stuff, and Mary Tyler Moore. What can you say about her? And there was a couple other actors I didn't recognize their names, but it was a movie that was tolerable. Especially if you're at all interested in the technology. Chuck Yeager, who flew the Bell X-1, which is a precursor to the X-15. He broke the sound barrier in it. On the X-1s, they didn't want the pilots to be married because it's obviously a dangerous job. You're sitting on top of all the fuel in the world on an experimental aircraft. And Chuck Yeager's reply to that was that he was already married and had a son. He says, "Well, that being the case, I'll be more careful." And so they let him fly the Bell X-1. So that's about all I had. I enjoyed the movie. I'd seen it before, but it had been a long time, and I like those type of movies that are made during the 60s. Tom had mentioned the Strategic Air Command. That's another. I was in the SAC, and I remember a lot of this stuff about the ORIs and all that, where everybody went into panic because the commander, the wing commander, he wanted to be general, and if you blew the ORI, that'd be the end of his career. So everybody had to be prepared when the inspectors came through, that kind of stuff. So if there's any other questions, I can tell you what I know about it. Back to Ned. KG5P.
Okay, thanks. K5ICX, you're up.
All right, thank you, Brenda. Had to kind of find the foot switch here somewhere, but okay. Well, as far as characterization, I don't have a lot to say. We had a lot of folks in it that were well known or would be well known. Of course, Mary Tyler Moore as Pamela Stewart, and Charlie Bronson as Lee Brendan. Those two were easily recognized. James Gregory. All those people were either were known or were on their way up on the popularity scale. We know who they all are. I don't know. I thought the characterizations were okay. It was a bit stiff at times. Geez, this is the hardest part, is that in this film, it's all about the airplane. It's all about the X-15. It's all about where are we going next, and the military, de rigueur, Air Force, and what they're doing. Obviously, they had a lot of help from the U.S. Air Force in that all the sets and the offices and that had that look. Good God, I've never seen so many models in one place. Good God, I've never seen so many ashtrays in one place. So those things all play into it, I guess, as well. Is bits of business as everybody is discussing how they're going to keep the program on track and how we're going to make this and that work. And we've scratched these people or we're bringing in these people. I suppose that happens, and it makes sense for a movie from 1961 or earlier. It was mentioned earlier somewhat demeaningly that this played out like a World War II film. Maybe it did. I don't know. I wasn't in the military, so I don't know. I suspect there's a more realistic approach to all this, and people really do act more human and say things in ways that are more striking, in a sense. Let me reset. One of the things that I thought was striking about the whole thing is that, you know, when the wives say, you know, those are sirens, it could be worse. And it did get worse. The vehicle pulls up and you know immediately that the pilot is dead. Those things have happened and continue to happen in the military. And wives are already predisposed and know what's going on. I thought that was interesting. And glaringly true. Another thing is that everybody knows what's going on. In the houses on the base, there's the cul-de-sac. Everybody knows everybody else's business. There's no way not to know it. And then the kids grow up in that environment, and it becomes somewhat, well, how would you describe it? Not the new... different from what would happen in a civilian life. This is the new normal, and I saw that as quite poignant. So I had Mike, the son. He got upset and he acted in ways tried to destroy the telescope and that. Yeah, I can see that. I can see kids having that feeling. So it's really interesting. The more you look at it, the more you go, yeah, I can see that happening. Is it stiff? Is it somewhat stilted in its presentation? Sometimes. Other times, not so much. KE5ICX.
Okay. KF5TSK, Burl.
That's KF5TSK. Well, I would say that to me it seemed like the ladies were overdressed, you know. Even when they're home, it's like they're dressed to go somewhere. You know, as far as smoking, there was one scene that someone was smoking a pipe, and it was like, how could you see in that room? And it was so, the room was small compared to the number of people and the equipment in it, and it just seemed like, you know, is this really NASA? One of the things that really bothered me a lot was they kept showing the view of the cockpit, and it was, I don't know if it was two cameras or lights to the side of it, but it was like all you were looking at was the suit and the helmet, and it's like, you know, it seemed to be boring to me that, you know, even the chase planes, everybody had their oxygen masks on. It's like, you know, every other movie you see, it's like, you know, they really put their oxygen mask on if they're really going to do something, but if not, they're just, you know, flying with it, not having it on. KF5TSK, back to net.
Okay, David, W5EBV. What did you think of the characters?
The characters were kind of stock in terms of not the when they weren't flying an X-15 or preparing for it. They were they were fairly standard drama. And actually, as it was said, Richard Donner, this was his debut, and he went on to make some pretty good movies. Superman 2 being one of them. But this movie, interestingly, almost provided a template that moved for movies that followed. And for some reason, The Towering Inferno comes to mind. Or maybe Earthquake, both Irwin Allen movies. Strong male characters, Charlton Heston, the women who love them, allusions to family, marriage, romance, kids, and they both, and X-15 movie, develop the emotional element and the audience empathy for them, and then they kill off one of the significant ones. The test pilot husband and father was akin to the mother who fell out of the glass elevator in The Towering Inferno and ricocheted off the building on the way down. In short, these movies all have in common the movie trope or theme that great achievement and triumph and great tragedy go hand in hand. There was one scene near the beginning of the movie where there's a conference room and you have management and the media and the astronauts all together, and the guy leading the meeting calls on Public Relations Officer Colonel Jessup. I fully expected him to stand up and say, "You can't handle the truth," and then sit down. But instead, he introduced the pilots, which were flying the X-15 per script. Let's see, and back to the air breather thing. I think you can spot an air breather engine by the fact that it has an air intake at the front. I think that's pretty universal to distinguish that from a non-air breather engine used for propulsion. And regarding the engines, the first ones, for the first 20 or so flights, it was a lower power XLR-99, which generated a paltry 57,000 pounds of thrust. No, that was the good one. XLR-99 was the good one, which were in most of the flights. But the first one was based on ethyl alcohol, which was the XLR-11, which had much lower thrust. The later engines, the more powerful ones, were based on anhydrous ammonia. But the characters were pretty basic for a drama documentary, I guess. W5EBB.
Thanks. Let's see, who's next? KG5BZWJ. Go ahead.
This is KG5BZW. Yeah, I don't know that I have much to add. As far as, I don't know, David actually kind of summed up a lot of it, but it's still, even if they're stock characters, I thought they were stock, they might, well, maybe not call, okay, well, sorry, cat, getting, okay, even if they were, stock characters, I think you could learn a lot from them. Again, though, this might be just one of those things where it's just looking at the past from the present viewpoint that just the educational value of just looking how these characters interacted and whatnot. Even though there wasn't, arguably that much growth or whatever, but there was still, I'm not sure. Should have taken a few more notes. I'm going off the top of my head here, and I'm not doing so well. Let me reset. Now, oh yeah, I wanted to. I was talking about Borg. I meant Bronson earlier, but in regards to plot elements and that kind of thing, but yeah, I should have written something else done, but I don't have it, so pass it on to the next person. This is KG5BGW. Back to net.
Righty, KF5 PDS Billy.
Yeah, I agree with what's been said before. Yeah, they're pretty stock characters. You have the strong male leads, and yes, the wives who love them, and yeah, I agree with when you brought up the sexism. You know, we have the in those era of films, but the thing that really bothered me that was a little bit different in this film was when Mary Tyler Moore's character was talking with the psychologist character. And talking about, wives and having children, the part that really bothered me when he was trying to explain to her why wives have children or their motivation. And, we have a term now called mansplaining, and that to me just seemed like a big mansplain when he was trying to describe, where women's original, motivations for having children originates in the mind, and then it, and I just is like, that's true, but for him to try to think he has to explain it to her, and she patiently listens to him, and he, I don't know if he insinuated or I can't remember if he outright said it that having wives and children was a complication to the test pilot's way of life, and yes, that's true, but just the way he said it was very condescending and just very, to me, it was insulting. Obviously, I'm biased, but and then at the end, she kind of, to me, she made a statement when the next wife came in about how he was trying to convince her to create a women's auxiliary for creating a team of space cadets, and I know she was referring to having children, but also I know, I don't know if it was a slang term back then, but I remember in the 80s, we would call somebody a space cadet if they were spacey and not in touch with reality, we would say that they were, you're such a space cadet, and so I don't know if she was trying to have a dig at him about trying to say that he was trying to talk to them about creating a group of silly wives, but I guess it could be interpreted that way nowadays, and I thought that if that was meant that way, that was a good dig back at him that maybe he was not clued to as like a woman's in joke. So I thought maybe that was kind of a good touche on her part. But that to me just struck me as a different element, having to have that like mansplain right there in the middle of the film. I was like, what? Just kind of struck me as very off-putting. But then later she makes a definite dig at him about when they were at the dinner, saying that if the character, his name was Tony, if he was here, he'd say it all originates in my hypothalamus. And she's like, they were like, well, what's that? And she's like, I don't know, but he says we need it, So I thought that was kind of funny. She was making some humor, he was not there, but she was making humor kind of at his expense later on in the film. So it just shows that these weren't dopey wives. They were intelligent women. They fully were aware of the situation and the risks and things, but yet took it, seemingly in stride, and having a sense of humor, knowing what their husbands were facing, that they may not come home one day when they left out the door, to me showed that the women, had strength, because, how could you live life knowing that when you kissed your husband goodbye in the morning, he may not be coming home through the door in the evening, and to still have a sense of humor and conduct an everyday lifestyle, a normal life for your children and a normal life for yourself must have been incredibly difficult. So to me, the characters, even though it wasn't, gone into in great detail, they had depth and complexity, but, it was not done to great depth, but it was done enough that you could read into it and apply your own knowledge to it. So I think whenever a movie does that, allows the the viewer to inject more and go read more, like we're all talking about reading more about the X-15 and things like that. To me, that's good filmmaking, because it makes you question it, makes you analyze it, makes you want to know more about it. So, and it would be interesting if they had a book about test pilots' wives. I'm sure they're out there. Those would be very interesting to read. So with that, I will return it to you. This is KFI PDS. Back to Matt.
Yeah, I read that book, The Astronaut Wives Club. Yeah, it's the same all through the industry. They, a lot is expected of them, and it is not easy. Okay, KG5PMN. James, go ahead.
I thought the character actors are pretty standard for that type of a show. You see the people getting out of the plane or doing whatever they were doing, and although it was kind of hard for me to distinguish between what was actual set drama and actual plane footage, where they were using some of the airport stock footage and, get the people out of the plane or whatever. I also thought that the dress and acting was appropriate for the time period. I know my mother did things like that back in the 60s when my father would come home, and we'd act kind of like that, like the families did. KG5PMN, back to the net.
Okay, well, yeah, I think that the characterization was pretty accurate. The nothing unusual here. So, like so many other military movies and astronaut movies that we have, it's a type of person that wants to be a test pilot, and if you're not that kind of person, you just better not even think about it. They're a breed apart, and well, I'm about running out of stuff to say. It's a midnight. I think we're going to open it up for whoever wants to jump in and say something, rather than go down the rotation list. So, any comments you have, please come now and give us your wisdom.
Papa.
KG5P. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, well, I don't know if I call this wisdom or not. One of the actors that I'd forgotten to mention, who I like, is Kenneth Tobey, who, he's that red-haired guy, red-haired actor. And he's been in lots and lots of sci-fi movies. He was in The Thing, which was in black and white, so you couldn't tell if he had red hair. But I've also seen him in several episodes of the Rockford Files. He usually plays one of Rockford's nemesis, like maybe a mafia goomba or a crooked, police chief or something like that. Some kind of roles that Kevin McCarthy would appear in. And I really like seeing him in there. He passed away here a couple of years ago, but I always liked old Kenneth Tobey. So back to that, KG5P.
Okay, let's pause for a second, see if we have any late check-ins, new check-ins. Okay, gonna open it up to more comments. Please come now.
5 EBB.
KE5ICX.
KG5BZW.
That for W5 EBB?
Correct, W5EBB. Go ahead.
Okay, you had a double there, so there was one more. I believe it was Jay. So the X-15, for all of its triumphs, has never been matched. You know, in the early 80s, we had talk of, you know, the Orient Express, and President Reagan described in one of his State of the Union addresses that a Mach 25 aircraft was just around the corner, basically. And when I was working at General Dynamics in the late 80s, the National Aerospace Plane was being designed and developed. I didn't work on it personally, but I know a lot of hours were charged to those particular account numbers. So it's a wonder that, you know, we haven't made any more progress towards that effort. And it seems like there would be great rewards and gains, maybe commercial applications, certainly, but nothing has come of it for some reason. Now, other I think contributions to X-15 made was well, maybe for cruise missiles. You know, that's the way B-52 would handle a cruise missile on its wings, and it's operationally similar to the way the space shuttle was deployed, or at least how it landed. The X-15 was basically a glider. After 1 or 2 minutes of really high-powered thrust, where depending on the profile for that mission, for speed or for altitude, you know, it would just arc up really high and then kind of disappear, and then it would land, kind of make a circular kind of approach back down to the runway, and it was a glider, very similar to the way the space shuttle landed. One other comment about characters. The Mary Tyler Moore Space Cadet, I LOL'd. I laughed out loud, literally. It was definitely a dig towards the Colonel to conceal and make light of his preachy psychological, physiological treatise on the mental component of pregnancy. But the enmity between a man and a woman is definitely a movie trope, and it's been around, for a long, long time. W5EBB.
Yeah, you're so right about the X-15. It was not really an airplane. It was a rocket. It, you know, they had rocket fuel on it, and they burned it up, and then they glided down. So, that's, you know, comparing it to the SR-71 is not really, you know, it's not really accurate. So, but to me, it's one of the most important vehicles ever created, because it set this whole stage for the space program. So many people worked so hard on it, and we learned so much. I think KG5 BZW had comments.
This is KG5 BZW. Actually, I think KC5 ICX had a comment before me, but anyway. Just a few comments on several things. Well, often we talk about special effects. Obviously, some of the effects were kind of, you know, well, 60s, dated 60s. But Burl brought up a comment about the spacesuits, which, I mean, not the spacesuits, the pilot suits that the pilots had to wear, of course, and you had to basically the photography of that, and you didn't, of course, you didn't see the cockpit of it. You just kind of saw. It was almost like a green screen or something, but it was just a screen. I don't remember what the color was, but I actually thought that was interesting because the choice of color, however it was done, it actually kind of brought focus to the pilot and the minimal amount of facial expressions you could see from their eyes, and it was actually kind of interesting just trying to learn to read how exactly they were. Is that surprise? Is that concern? Is that what exactly is that? And I actually thought that was pretty well done, given what they're trying to do. But there's obviously a reason, I think, and more common sci-fi films where they don't have that helmet. They like to get the full reaction of the full facial reaction of the actors. And one more thing, let me reset. Not exactly comment on X-15, but it's just kind of a interesting observation, in my view. That it seems like we're kind of doing the same thing with Virgin Galactic's Spaceship 2. Not necessarily trying to reach any records or anything, but we're trying to. Obviously, the goals are different, but it's kind of almost similar setup. High-flying carrier craft with the smaller rocket as payload and to be launched off of there and maybe achieve a little bit of suborbital flight and all. And this is 2018. Nearly about 60 years away from the X-15 program. So, wow, we got that just kind of shows how big of a program the X-15 program was, I think. KG5BGW, back to net.
K5 ICX is waiting in the wings. Go ahead.
I guess, well, I think everything has been covered this evening. My only comments were, or are, and I know the big elephant in the room is that I hate it when they take and try and do a 16:9 with a 3x4 picture with people being fat and short and airplanes being really unbelievably disproportionate to what they're supposed to be. It drives me nuts in movies. I watch, Comet TV. Comet TV is here in Dallas, and it's over air. And they take a 4x3 signal and they put it 16:9, and everybody's short and fat, and it's all distorted like funhouse mirrors. It drives me nuts. I'm sorry. It just drives me nuts. I'll say this. Mary Tyler Moore did an excellent job. There's no distortion with her, just with the X-15. And back to net control because I'm done. KE5ICX.
KG5P.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed that too, Tom. The X-15, when there was, taxiing or something like that, or landing, because you couldn't taxi, but it looked like it was about 300 feet long. But in reality, it's only 50 feet long. It's 50 feet, so it was really stretched out. I wonder why it looks so long, and that's why, because they stretched out the 4x3 aspect ratio. KG5P.
comments?
Yeah, the B-52, I mean, it's got some long wings, but they're not as long as it looked like in the movie. It looked like those things are a mile from wingtip to wingtip, KG-5P.
They actually considered using the B-36 before they decided on the B-52 to launch the X-15. Even some thought of using the B-50, but I don't know how far that would have gone. I'm not sure it would have been big enough. All right, I think we're going to close this down because it's midnight. I want to thank everybody for participating. Before we go, Tom, do you have any information on next Saturday?
I do. There is a movie from 1968 called Mission Mars. Mission Mars is our next movie. I have not seen it. I'm sure it is great. KE5I6.
Hey, well, we're going to close this down, and this is WB5 OZL Claire.